Welcome to João MacDowell, who's a Brazilian composer and who has recently composed a play, an opera, based on Ingmar Bergman's film The Seventh Seal, and the opera has the same name. So it would be natural to start the questioning or the interview with the composer here to ask, where did it all start with regard to your relation to Bergman at first?
I used to go to an art movie theater near my home, just across the street from the house where I lived in Brasilia, Brazil. There was this cinema, and they played a lot of art films, Buñuel, Fellini, Godard, and Brazilian Glauber Rocha, movie makers from the 60s. And one day I went there and I didn't even know what that was. I just went there every week because that was what we had to do in the town at the time. And I must have been about 14, 15, and I went there and I saw Smultronstell, the wild strawberries. And that caused a really deep impression. That was very strong, and I realized that was different from anything else, from these other, it was, I still love Buñuel and Fellini, but there was something in Bergman that hit a different note, a deeper, very important chord.
Did you find any musical things in his films first, or did that come later?
I don't think the association was present there at first. No, I think it was more of a spiritual journey as in the depth as an artist, rather than an immediate association with music. That is much more recent. Even the possibility of converting Bergman into an opera is something that I would not have conceived if I had not been given this scholarship to go to Bergman State and stay there. That would not have crossed my mind as a realistic possibility. It's not an idea that I would have dared to approach.
Right, so that was the next question. When came this motivation for making an opera based on Bergman?
Yeah, by 2014 I was finishing my third opera, which was the story of three sisters, and I had a temporary title that wasn't very good. One day I realized that the story was very similar to Bergman's Cries and Whispers, Viskinjarok group, and I wrote to the Bergman Foundation asking if I could use the title. The opera is very different from the film, and that one thing led to the other. I sent an application to Bergman State and ended up there with some wonderful artists. Also, at the same time, working in the Bergman property. Being there, that made me really start considering other films of Bergman that could become operas, and maybe doing something that was truly adapted from the original script, not just loosely inspired like this other earlier opera.
And concerning the inspiration, I mean, this The Seventh Seal of Bergman is a kind of a road movie, put back to the medieval ages, and he has a lot of allusions and references to the medieval stuff, everything from death, the picture of death, and but there is also some comedy parts in it. So it's a road movie, it has some comedian parties, it even has the comedians, of course, referring back to the medieval tradition. So I wonder, in your opera, do you play more or emphasize certain of these things more than others? Do you have the playfulness in it? Do you have any, or is it the seriousness? Death in this film is playful himself. He's not like this really serious death. He's a little bit playful, and he invites for a piece of chess. So how is that adapted?
And the dance at the end. And there's a dance of death. Yes, no, definitely. The more I worked with the script, the more of the playfulness, the humor, the very subtle, somewhat dark, but also ironic humor of Bergman in that script came across, and I realized that there's a lot of playfulness and funny stuff in the film, in the script itself. I mean, I was working out of three texts. I had the original play, theater play, I had the script before the film, I had the script after the film that where he changed some things in addition. And every time, the more I looked into it, the more I found of this humor and this you know, people remember The Seventh Seal as this very dark, you know, it's a film about death, it's in black and white, and it's Bergman, it's so deep and intense. But the more I looked into it, it's also, it's about life. It's about how do we go on living in face of death and destruction. In a way, the text is also part of a long tradition of apocalyptic literature. There's always been these books and plays that deal with our times as the last, as the end of times. You know? And the Seventh Seal deals with that. In a way, he's talking about the Middle Ages, but he's talking about, you know, existentialist philosophy. He's talking about the risk of atomic annihilation, you know, atomic warfare, and the possibility of this apocalyptic reality around us, and how do we cope with that? And Bergman's solution is through communion among people, you know, to being together and to creating these moments that happen through art. You know, so he has this troupe of artists that survives at the end. So it's like we really defeat death by being in the moment, by performing, by bettering our task. And I think when I was writing the music, I really didn't want it to be so bleak and dark. It would be easy to write very dark, circumspect music on this topic. You know, writing dark and serious music is not so hard once you have the tools. It's harder to write music that has that seriousness, but at the same time has a lightness and a joy to be alive, to be here in the company of others.
And as you may know, Bergman himself has said that what I really wanted to be was a composer, but I was never talented, so I had to choose what I could, namely film. And he said that, and the reason why is that music touches everyone at their deepest non-linguistic, non-communicative level in that sense. So it's the deepest touch. And he said that I want to do the same with my films. So this communion you talked about, that's exactly what he wants to do with the film. So is your main intention with your opera really to touch in that communion sense, like Bergman says about his films?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's a thread that I pick up from Bergman. I mean, even before Bergman, I mean, not before, but before I started working on this opera, I had already started thinking of contemporary opera as a ritual. I mean, I think that, you know, Italian opera was born out of this desire, the 1600 desire to recreate Greek drama, and Greek drama itself was a recreation of older initiation rituals when music, medicine, theater, magic were all one thing, you know. So it's a moment when a community gets together and experiences that moment, you know, through a story, through music, through art, and you may allow yourself to see life in a way you hadn't seen before, to experience an emotion, to think about these deep questions. And I think that's a mission of the contemporary artist, because we live in a society where things are very fragmentary. So in the 20th century, when James Joyce does this fragmentary, you know, stream of consciousness, that's very revolutionary, because he was like, you know, destroying the structure of the old 18th century romantic novel. But nowadays everything is fragmentary. You go on Facebook, you go on your... So creating a ritual where people can connect and be present in the same moment, I think is the greatest mission of artists today, you know, so we can be together, and a lot of the structure is built around that idea.